Shabbat Shalom once more. Brotherhood is an easy assignment for a Shabbos sermon because we have so many examples of brotherhood in our Torah. Mostly, they're trying to kill each other. Cain does a bang-up job right out of the gate, but brotherhood has an interesting redemptive arc in Torah. We go from fratricide to forgiveness and even love. This week in Vayishlach, Isaac confronts his brother Esau, who has vowed to kill him after having his birthright and blessing stolen from him. At the moment of their confrontation, where Esau has 400 men with him, clearly prepared for war, the two brothers instead fall on each other's necks, embrace, and weep. A brotherly redemption narrative exceeded only by the next generation, when Joseph forgives his brothers for selling him to slavery in Egypt. Again, with a tearful reunion and embrace. There is so much material for Brotherhood Shabbat. So much to say about the power of that particular bond to transcend even the most bitter conflicts and repair a broken world. But today is Sisterhood Shabbat. And with that comes the invitation to dig deeper in our sacred text. Of course, we have Leah and Rachel, but they too are pit against each other, made to compete for their husband Jacob's affection, for who can produce the most children. One of the rare examples we get of two women bound in the unbreakable bond of sisterhood is Ruth and Naomi. Ruth clings to her mother-in-law, refusing to let her go, taking on her people, her God, and even her burial place. But the book of Ruth is so far away. We have to turn all the way to the back of our Tanakh, to Ketuvim, to writings. What does this week's Parsha, what does Vayishlach tell us about the critical need for sisterhood? Vatetze Dina bat Leah asher yalda Yaakov lirot bivnot haaretz. Now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Our commentators want to know what made Dinah go out. Some attempt to vilify her with promiscuous intent. Rashi explains that she was fond of adorning herself and going out. He points to the phrase we read here, Vatetze Dinah, and how earlier, when Leah goes out to seduce her husband, having hired him with mandrakes from her sister Rachel, we read Vatetze Leah. It's the same phrase, Vatetze. So just as Leah went out with romantic intentions, so too must Dinah have. Rashi concludes, like mother, like daughter. This, unfortunately and rather offensively, paves the way for some commentators to blame the victim, Dinah, for the tragedy that befalls her in the city when she's abducted by Shem. But other commentators understand Dinah's going out as an only daughter's attempt to address the intense loneliness she feels having 12 brothers and no sisters. She goes out, they argue, because she needs sisterhood. Contemporary Israeli midrashist and scholar Rivka Lubitch authored her own midrash called And Dinah Went Out, which explores this exact theme. She speaks to the sacred bond of female companionship, to this gap in Dinah's heart, when she quotes the rabbis of the Talmud who write either friendship or death. Lubitch imagines the fictional Beit Midrash study hall of Bruria, one of the few named women of the Talmud, where women sages engage in Torah study. The particular topic they're discussing is whether Dinah consented to Shem or not. Either way, it's clear that Dinah, whom we never actually hear from in Torah, is silenced. If she didn't consent, then of course Shem silenced her. If she did consent and loved Shem, then her brothers silenced her when they respond by killing Shem and burning the city to the ground. Either way you slice it, we are denied Dinah's voice. Dinah, who is overshadowed by the men in her life, all of whom go on to be our ancestral heads of our tribes. But we never hear from Dinah. So Lubitch writes a midrash giving her a voice. not through any added dialogue, but in the way she describes Dina's silence. She writes, "Dina's silence resounds from one end of the world to the other. It is the scream of the heart." This week, our Torah warns us about the critical need for sisterhood and the danger of silencing women and their stories. There's an untold story of a woman in our text named Lilith. And Lilith is basically the Wicked Witch of the West. She has one mention in our Tanakh, in the prophetical book of Isaiah, where she's referred to as a demon. And our medieval rabbinic commentary in a book called the Alphabet of Ben Sira expounds on Lilith and says that she is, in fact, a demon who steals newborn babies. So if you know a woman or have someone in your life who ever in the delivery room had amulets, it's because of this Jewish superstition that those amulets are protecting the child from Lilith, the Wicked Witch of the West. But the rabbis want to know what make her wicked. And in order to understand her story, they take us back to the Emerald City of the Garden of Eden, where the rabbis are troubled by what appears to be, according to some ways to read the Torah, two different accounts of the creation of the first man and the first woman, in Genesis 1 and in Genesis 2. In Genesis 1, a close read shows that Adam and the first man and the first woman were created at the same time. Zachar u'nekava bara otam. Male and female, God created them. And in the second chapter of Genesis, it's clear that Adam is created first and experiences profound loneliness. And so God causes a great sleep to fall upon Adam and takes a rib, and from that rib creates Eve. There can be no contradiction in Torah, and so what the rabbis do is they say, maybe, some rabbis hold, there was a wife before Eve. There was a woman before Eve, and that was Lilith, Adam's first wife. But because they were created as equals, there was strife between them. Adam refused to cede power. And because of that, the rabbis say in this medieval midrash, Lilith pronounces the unpronounceable name of God, sprouts wings, and flies out of the garden. The Wicked Witch. But then you have contemporary midrash. There is a whole school of modern thought, and there's a modern midrashist named Judith Plaskow. She's a feminist scholar, a Jewish scholar, and she writes a book called The Coming of Lilith. And it's basically wicked to the Wizard of Oz, where she says, I don't know if Lilith is truly wicked. I want to understand, I want to tell an empathetic tale of who she is and how she became this way. And so she writes a midrash, a whole book actually. I just want to bring you an excerpt. And in this, she posits that Lilith and Eve was the first sisterhood, that they were actually friends. Sound familiar? She writes, one day, after many months of strange and disturbing thoughts, Eve, wandering around the edge of the garden, noticed a young apple tree she and Adam had planted, and saw that one of its branches stretched over the garden wall. Spontaneously, she tried to climb it, and struggling to the top, swung herself over the wall. She did not wander long on the other side before she met the one she had come to find, for Lilith was waiting. At first sight of her, Eve remembered the tales of Adam and was frightened, but Lilith understood and greeted her kindly. Who are you? They asked each other. What is your story? And they sat and spoke together of the past and then of the future. They talked for many hours, not once, but many times. They taught each other many things and told each other stories and laughed together and cried over and over till the bond of sisterhood grew between them. Sometimes there's a gap in our text, just like there can be a gap in our hearts, and we seek to fill those gaps with midrash that tells the untold stories of our heroes, and with sisterhood, with the bond of camaraderie that only a brotherhood or a sisterhood can afford. And that power of sisterhood which unfortunately is rare in our text, is so powerful that it can both transform the individuals and the world for good. We have an incredible sisterhood here at B'nai Yeshurun, and you all know that. There's a long list of all of their accomplishments and what they do for this community and how they elevate it and change it for good. The Yizkor book, Every High Holidays, or the memories of loved ones, is on display for all to read and remember and study. Our Sisterhood gift shop, and among many other things, for all of the generosity that runs all of our social and religious programming in the synagogue, there's also Torah Fund. Torah Fund is a magnificent fund that funds the conservative seminaries, not only in this country, but around the world, even in Potsdam. And it's because of Torah Fund that I am who I am today, that I received the education that I received, that I have a sermon that gives you not only our traditional texts, but also stuff you've never heard of before, like Lilith. It's because of Torah Fund that I got to benefit from a Beit Midrash that resembles Bruria's fictional Midrash, where there are female sages who are teaching me and debating in Torah study. You don't get that everywhere. In fact, it's rare. It's a gap in our tradition. So Sisterhood fills that gap in so many ways. And I personally want to thank Sisterhood for all of your magnificent achievements. And it's my honor now to call up our immediate past president, Sue Nash, to share a few words as well. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Okay, now we all want to go to the Kiddush because we have really good booze and we've got a great Kiddush waiting for us. And all I want to say is thank you to Sisterhood for everyone who's contributed today and support Sisterhood, and I hope you'll continue to do that. As Rabbi said, we have a lot of wonderful programs and we do a lot for the synagogue. We want to say thank you. So I also want to thank Lisa in the kitchen and Laurel, who helped put everything together for today. So thank you all for everything that you do. And thank you, Hedy, as well. Shabbat Shalom.